Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everybody, and thank you all for giving us some of your time to join us for this event brought to you by the PanIIT USA. Welcome. Just a very quick word about the PanIIT USA. We're a 50,000 plus member group, and we are growing thanks to all of you. While we do quite a few things, two of our prime missions are to improve the branding of the IITs and also to bring a variety of alumni services to you, such as these events. Besides these webinars, we have bridge, we have poker, we have chai and chit chat events. And there's also a very, very large virtual summit planned for December 4th, 2020. Now this one is planned to fill up quickly, so register fast. www.iit2020.org. I'll say that one more time, www.iit2020.org. Incidentally, we're also partnered with the Vision for this event today. I also want to thank all of you who have answered my call at many of our previous events to volunteer. Flood of requests for people wanting to volunteer for that. Today, I've got a slightly different request for all of you. See if you can spare 10 minutes of your time, perhaps connect with a fellow alum that you haven't connected with for a long time. Ask him if he's registered on the organization so he doesn't miss out on some of our good events. Our website, .org. There are also fantastic sponsorship opportunities available for those among you that would like to get your company name out in a big way, or your own name out to an extremely wide audience. Sponsorship opportunities are available for our poker event this Saturday, our next webinar on September 10th, and of course, our grand virtual summit that I mentioned earlier on December 4th. On that note of sponsors, a very big thank you to our gold sponsor, Riversand, co-founded by an IIT Madras alumnus, Upen Varanasi. Riversand is a global master and product data management software company, and Upen has been instrumental in guiding the company to be a global leader in this space. But more important, Upen and his wife, Maithili, share a very deep interest in helping underprivileged children. Thank you, Upen, my friend. A big thank you also goes out to our silver sponsors for today's event, Z-Cubes, GoProcure, and Times and Images. Z-Cubes was founded by Joseph Pally, an IIT alum, GoProcure also by an IIT alum, Sandeep Gauba. And interestingly, Times and Images was founded by both the spouse and the sister of IIT alums, Sailaja Bandopadhyay. Joseph, Sandeep, Sailaja, my dear friends, thank you so very much. You know, while I get the privilege of starting these events, the true real credit for these events goes out to Ron Gupta and the wonderful team of volunteers that put this together. Ron Gupta is a fellow member on the board, very proud and privileged to serve with him. He's from IIT KGP, and a very interesting and important snippet about Ron, he founded the Ranbir and Chitra Gupta School of Infrastructure at IIT KGP. Ron, my dear friend, take it away.
Thank you. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on which part of the world you're in. Welcome to this PanIIT USA sponsored virtual conference. Our purpose is to address the various topics that are of interest to fellow IITians worldwide. Because of COVID-19, we are not able to do the physical meetings that we used to do, but because of COVID-19, our day-to-day lives turned upside down. Our educational system has transformed, and are in the process of being transformed. So we offered a virtual conference 3 weeks ago on education, and we were pleased to have Chancellor Pradeep Khosla, an IITian who runs the University of California in San Diego, and Sudhir Jain, who is the director of IIT Gandhinagar, and that was well received. Today, we have three giants in global economy with us. We are very proud and fortunate to have them with us. And they're going to address economy from three different angles, from three different directions. First, we have Arundhati Bhattacharya, and she's going to take the angle of the data economy, digital economy, and what is the new data emphasis is doing to our economy and what will it do after COVID-19. Second, we have Raghuram Rajan, who will address the policy issues that a government or a national bank can take, and what is the impact of that on our economy today, and what will it be like after COVID-19. And third, we have Deepak Jain, who's been the dean of several management schools all over the world, and he's going to address the issues that the management students have to face today and in the near future. Let's now get the conference. First of all, a couple of housekeeping points. First of all, the conference is being recorded. So there is no need for you to take copious notes as we used to take in IIT. Everybody will receive a copy of the recording soon after the conference. Number two, just a disclaimer that all of the opinions expressed by the speakers today are of the speakers themselves and do not necessarily represent the opinions of PanIIT USA or its associated associations. And third, please do provide us with your feedback and comments. Go to our website, iit.org. That's it, iit.org. O-R-G. Now let's get started with our first speaker. It's my great honor to introduce to you Arundhati Bhattacharya. Arundhati is the CEO and president of Salesforce in India. And her objective is to help Salesforce grow the business in India and integrate with the ecosystem of the customers in that large country. Prior to this, Arundhati was the first woman chairperson of the largest bank in India, the State Bank of India. And she brought in a new digital angle to banking, which has left a mark on the banking industry. So much so that State Bank was termed as one of the three best places to work in India. I'm also personally proud to say that Arundhati serves on the Board of Governors of my alma mater, the IIT Kharagpur. Thank you, Arundhati. Now, Arundhati is an alumna of the Lady Brabourne College and also Jadavpur University in Kolkata. So it's my great pleasure and honor to bring on Arundhati Bhattacharya.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be virtually here at the Pan IIT conference among some of the most brilliant minds in India and the world. Presenting before Dr. Raghuram Rajan is a tough opening act, given that he was a regulator and I was heading the largest regulated entity under him. Also, I'm on the board of a company alongside Professor Jain. What convinced me to be here today, though, is not only the presence of these two erudite gentlemen, though that played its part, but because it gives me immense pleasure to do anything with and for IITians. This is because I spent several happy years on one of your campuses, being part of the tears, travails, and joyous moments of many of my husband Preetimoy's students. The 4D chessboard, metaphorically, has been thrown into the air by the COVID-19 pandemic, potentially unleashing the biggest recession since the Great Depression. We don't yet know where all the pieces will land, but business leaders believe that this is a trigger, a turning point in the way people work and the way businesses are run. Businesses fear nothing as much as uncertainty, and yet we surely have entered the VUCA world, which we used to talk of only in such conferences. It is the ability of an organization to take pivotal decisions on necessary business-wide transformation and carry it out in days rather than months or even years, and nimbly address the challenges posed by an uncertain environment that will determine whether it survives. We believe that those operations that put their customer and employees at the center and evolve around them an environment of innovation, nurture the willingness to change and create differentiated business models, all on a strong backbone of data and platforms, will have a far better chance of not only survival, but also robust growth. Agility and differentiated thinking is the need of the hour, orchestrated with the right data and digital initiatives for it to make a difference. As an example, I think I must mention one of our Indian companies, Reliance Industries, which in the last 12 weeks concluded 13 deals to raise $20 billion from some of the biggest names in the IT and private equity industries amidst one of the strictest lockdowns in the world. This is a company that has taken to heart the saying that data is the new oil. A behemoth in the oil refining space, they developed their digital initiatives in telecom and retail in the last few years. Their original fundraise was supposed to have been done by bringing in investors into their oil to chemicals business. But when that deal got delayed, they quickly pivoted and with exemplary agility continued with the fundraise on the back of their digital platforms business. This vision, agility, and differentiated thinking that this company displayed is what we need to see in many more companies. CEOs are now having to reimagine how to do business in this new uncertain world. Leaders may have thought of tech transformation as something that's nice to do. Today, it's an imperative. Every CXO conversation today has two words: omni-channel and anywhere access, for customers, for vendors, for suppliers, and staff. And none of this can be achieved without digital platforms. However, for a country like India, which suffers from a problem of scale, this was already a given because nothing other than technology and digital platforms can solve our problems in an affordable manner. What the pandemic has done is to hugely speed up this transformation, whether it be a problem of paucity of enough quality educational materials, or enough teachers, or enough doctors of a high caliber. Digital platforms and the use of data can solve many of these issues. People in the villages at one time could not access basic services. The government was not able to target every needy household and make every single subsidy paisa count. The answer to all of this was and is digital and data. Let me one such initiative, the very well-known PMJDY. It's not as though we did not attempt financial inclusion earlier, but it was the digital platform of Aadhaar, or the Unique Identification Authority of India, which maintains the biometric data of 1.1 billion Indians, that enabled us to do the crucial KYC, that enabled us to cover 98.5% of the families in India with at least one bank account in just 7 months. When these accounts were opened, 97% were zero balance. Today, in the 120 million accounts at bank alone, there is a balance of $5.4 billion. The digitization at the bottom of the pyramid is reflected in the number of transactions on the UPI platform. This payment platform enables you, with the app of Bank A, connected to an account at Bank B, to send money to a with an app of Bank C connected to his account at Bank D. The transaction and settlements happen in real time. Even in the last month, in the midst of the pandemic, there were 1.3 billion transactions on this platform for an amount of $37 billion. Let's come to an even later offering that is in fact set to be officially launched tomorrow. This platform, a part of the India stack, is the Open Credit Protocol. What it endeavors to do is seamlessly connect over 60 million MSMEs to lenders for low ticket size, short-term that would be otherwise too costly to source. The total credit gap in this area is estimated at 266 to $333 billion. With the capability to underwrite the risk of rich data, the platform expects to be able to instantly give loans in less than 5 minutes with no human decisioning involved, and yet ensure risk mitigation for the lenders and the best quotes for the borrowers. But as in all other cases, there are some challenges that entities face transform. In the digital era, harnessing data can be the difference between staying ahead or falling behind. As a result, most organizations investing millions of dollars into digital transformation efforts. And yet, a majority of these initiatives are failing because organizations are unable to create a data structure, the behaviors and mindsets that empower people to innovate and drive change with data. We know that data is powerful, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. Organizations need to properly capture, analyze, understand, and communicate data to leverage it to its full potential. It is in a legacy organization such as the one that I had led, such a change is a huge challenge. In our case, processes and infrastructure raised a huge barrier. Data was siloed. People were not even conscious of the need to capture data accurately. So that initially, I found we had customers who were 130 years old. We had to set up a project, appropriately named Project Ganga, to clean up the data and create awareness. A McKinsey study says that while 80% of organizations have begun their digital transformation, only 14% have registered sustained improvement and only 3% report complete success. What then is the secret sauce? Why this difference in outcome? In my experience, it is the passion and commitment at a level that determines outcome. It takes two hands to clap. So even if you implement the best of solutions, if organizations don't undertake change management initiatives, don't get staff to buy in, don't train their employees, the results will not be forthcoming. And none of this happens unless it is driven from the very top with vision and passion. CEOs must necessarily now be the chief transformation or chief digital officer. I talked of the responsibilities of the implementing organizations. Technology companies have a huge responsibility. I believe the technology industry is uniquely positioned to help companies weather this storm. As the pandemic physically forces people and organizations apart, technology companies have an important opportunity and responsibility to actually bring us closer together. With an increasing shift towards self-isolation, people and organizations are increasingly reliant on digital services to live their lives and carry out their businesses as best they can. It is incumbent on tech companies to continue to innovate and improve and bring to the customers the best fit solutions that add most value for them. It is important to seek and build trust. Trust that the solutions recommended are indeed the best for them. Trust that the data they will handle as a result of such innovations will be done in a secure and safe manner, such that they in turn honor the trust reposed in them by their customers. One such example is the fast-paced adoption of cloud technologies, and in India too, this continues to build momentum. In fact, one study found that 70% of executives surveyed across industries believe that the cloud will help them innovate 30 to 60% faster and will also lower implementation and operational risks. This is what Puma India, where we implemented the Commerce Cloud solution, had to say. The primary reason we are successful, platform is robust and can scale. Today, when we have a spike in the traffic, we don't even know it. We can quickly and easily redesign product pages and make landing pages more responsive. I hope that all of my customers can give testimonials like that. Further, traditionally, the tech industry has been competitive and proprietary in terms of the skills and technology that it develops. However, with technology becoming increasingly central to the foundation and protection of the economy and society, industry needs to work collaboratively and take a leading role in helping governments to upskill the region's workforce and close the digital skills gap. This will not only benefit wider society, it will also help technology companies that are already struggling to recruit highly skilled digital talent. We have talked so far of the imperative for digital and data in this new world, as well as the imperative for a data culture, a commitment to transformation by business and other entities, and the need for technology companies to innovate and hold trust as a primary value. But what of the policymakers? What do they need to think through in this changing scenario? There is today an increasing tendency to reverse the tide of globalization. While we believe data is the lifeblood of modern global economy, its free flow remains an imperative for a healthy, free digital economy. Digital trade and cross-border data flows are expected to grow faster than the overall rate of global trade. Businesses use data to create value, and many can only maximize that value when data can flow freely. This leads to the conversation around data localization and its impact on economic growth and innovation. A recent study by think tank ICRIER has found that if India kept its data borders open, it would increase its total volume of goods trade by an estimated $4 billion annually as cross-border data flows increase. This is not to say that some data that can compromise national security should not be localized. What we need now, therefore, is not a broad brush approach, but a nuanced one that determines what needs to be localized and what need not be. Lastly, in conclusion, I want to call out with this increasing reliance on digitization and data comes great responsibility. People are trusting technology in some form or other and welcoming it into their lives every day. The responsibility comes with an opportunity for making a positive social and the world. A great example of this is a company called Noodle.ai. Its mission is to create a world without waste by analyzing manufacturing patterns, supply chains, and logistic deployment. The company is using AI to reduce waste across a variety of industries, from consumer goods to steel. Noodle.ai looks at predictive analytics to minimize scenarios like trucks driving around or a steel mill producing when it shouldn't. The waste of one industry can become the raw material of another. Leveraging data and digital can help us make those connections, and collaboration can innovate those solutions faster. As we hurtle forward in this digital journey, let us also assess whether this will decrease or increase the gap between the haves and have-nots, and to ensure that the economically disadvantaged don't fall further behind, either through lack of access or lack of skills. We know that technology is not always inherently good or bad. It's what we do with it that matters. At Salesforce, through our Office of Ethical and Humane Use of Technology, we have established a set of guiding principles on the ethical use of technology that safeguards such rights as human rights, data privacy, and human safety. I would encourage all of you to ask Do I deserve my customers' trust? And what have I done to help build trust with my customers? As I wrap up, I want to go back to the 4D chessboard. Picture the pieces in the air. All have distinct roles to play. All have a purpose. As the pieces fall back onto the board, what are the thoughtful and strategic moves you can make? How will you leverage data, build trust, move your organization forward, and place your customers at the center of what you do? For it will be the companies that master these moves that succeed in this new era. Thank you.
Wow, that was phenomenal. I really loved your starting off with this very interesting analogy of the chessboard with the pieces flying in the air, your detailed analysis, and how you wrapped it all at the end with the same. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Just out of interest for the audience, this is an audience of IITians, so numbers. I've been getting some text on the side. I think right now there are close to about 1,000 people attending this event. Anyway, it's my honor to now introduce the second speaker of the day. It gives me extreme personal pride to introduce a fellow IIT Delhiite, Raghuram Rajan. Raghuram, of course, a resume has picked out some of his key accomplishments. Is the Catherine Dusack Miller Distinguished Service Professor of Finance at the University of Chicago, Booth School of Business. He was the 23rd governor of the Reserve Bank of India between 2013 and 2016. From 2003 to 2006, Raghuram was the chief economist of the National Monetary Fund. Incredibly accomplished, he has written several books, including the award-winning Fault Lines, How Hidden Fractures Still the World Economy. In fact, Raghu was awarded the Financial Times Goldman Sachs Prize for the best business book in 2010. Raghu is also a member of the Group of 30. He's received numerous outstanding honors and awards, including the Banker Magazine Prize, the Best Central Bank Governor of the Year in 2016. But the most important for me, with a little tinge of humor, Raghu received a BTech from my alma mater, IIT Delhi. Of course, Raghu went on to do even more, receiving an MBA from IIM Ahmedabad and a PhD from the MIT. It's a phenomenal personal honor, tremendous privilege for me, ladies and gentlemen, to present Governor Raghuram Rajan.
Thank you, Sundi. It's such a pleasure to be here, and thank you for inviting me. Let me tell you a little bit about Sundi, since you've heard a lot about me. Sundi and I overlapped at two places, IIT Delhi as well as MIT. Sundi, when he asked me, I could not say no, because in the past, I've asked Sundi many times when I was the debating secretary at IIT Delhi, and Sundi was our star performer. In just a minute, for those of you who know the competition, you get a chance to speak, and you have to speak uninterrupted for a minute. And there are people who are really good at it, who are very boring because they keep speaking but say nothing interesting. Sundi was really good, but also very, very funny. So because he always said yes, when he asked me, I had to say yes. I follow Arundhati Bhattacharya. She was, of course, the chairman of SBI, and she talked a little bit about dreading the regulator. I was her regulator for some time. But of course, I also had a dread of Ms. Bhattacharya because she was my biggest banker. But not just that, before every meeting, she used to send me a long letter with many complaints on what we should be doing better. Usually regulators tell banks what they should be doing. In her case, she was frank, detailed, and clear about what we should be doing. And I had to make sure that my people told me why she was right in some places and why she was wrong, so that I could actually respond to her when we met. She was a great banker, and I see from what she's been speaking on is going to be a great contributor to the digital industry in India. Deepak Jain, of course, is an old friend and will come back after me. He's had a great career both marketing as well as business administration. And amongst the many things I will cherish is the time we spent together working on the founding of the Indian School of Business. Of course, he did a lot more than I did. And finally, to Ron Gupta, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for all your generosity and time that you have devoted to the IITs. Now, my job here is really to talk a little bit about the global economic situation and what you might want to expect, many of you business people, and how you might see the next few quarters. It's useful to divide the economic response into four phases. The first phase is, of course, the containment of the virus and to provide relief to households and small and medium enterprises so that they can stay alive during the process of containment. And many thought in March that this would be a couple of months, given what China had done, given what Taiwan was doing, and to some extent what Europe also was doing at that time. And for a number of countries, containment has been a 2.5 month process, and it has been successful in the sense that the virus cases have been brought down to or double digits, and they have been able to open up. So the relief that has had to be provided has been large, but has been contained. There are countries, of course, the United States being a prime example, but also India, as well as Brazil, Mexico, where the containment has not happened despite lockdowns, despite enormous costs. And as a result, the cost of the virus is going to be significantly greater than for the countries that have been successful. And we'll come to that. Three other phases I want to talk about. When you've finished containing or been successful containing the virus, then there's a process of opening up. And there too, you need a lot of management because you have to make sure the virus doesn't spread again. So there is a process of putting in place testing, tracking, and isolation units so that you can contain whatever outbreaks there are quickly. You can identify them and contain them quickly, and that allows the economy to open up by and large, in the process of recovery. However, you also have to recognize there are deeply damaged firms in the economy at this point, and so recovery also has to be accompanied by a process of and many countries are getting to that. There's going to be enormous bankruptcies in the United States, certainly, and quite possibly in Europe also, as we repair the economy, reallocate resources, restructure capital structures. And finally, there is the possibility of reform. I'll come to some of this in a second. Let me start by talking about the containment efforts. This has been underway for the last few months. The intent was to induce a coma in the economy while the lockdowns were on to prevent lasting damage. The idea was, let's pay people to stay at home. Let us make sure their earnings aren't significantly impaired. Let us keep small and medium firms intact. They have no revenues. They have costs while they're paying their workers, while they're paying their landlord. But let's try and keep them intact. And this is where programs like the Paycheck Protection Program in the United States came about, but also the short work programs in Europe. And finally, the central banks were called in to pump liquidity into financial markets and also support credit flows to large firms. Now, this has happened in a big way in the industrial countries. The IMF estimates close to 20 percentage points of GDP have been spent in either credit support or fiscal support. In the United States, we've done that, but over and above that, now we're debating an additional fiscal support program. The Republicans lowballed the number at about 1 trillion. The Democrats want it to be 3.5 trillion. This is over and above the 20% of GDP that has been spent in one way or the other. This is another 15 percentage points of GDP or 12 to 15% if you take the midpoint. So enormous amounts of spending. And to some extent, in the areas that have bent the curve, it has worked. East Asia, was the first out of the problem, first into the problem, first out. China, to a large extent, of course, Chinese markets haven't opened up, so there is some inventorying going on. But in the manufacturing sector, China is largely back. In the service sector, still in the high contact services like travel, tourism, hospitality, still not back. Europe and Australia, again, similar story. In all these economies, you can get back to 90 to 90% of the old levels of recovery after an initial spurt because of pent up demand. You'll get back to 90, 95% without a vaccine. People are still scared of going to malls, of going to restaurants, bars. And so the service, high contact service sector is going to be impaired for some time. Also preventing the full recovery of these countries is the fact that the rest of the world, the Brazils, the United States, are still combating the virus. And there you don't have as much of a recovery in demand. Certainly in the US, we see that the states that are now big increase in the virus are going down once again after coming back when they opened up. So Arizona, Texas, California are shutting down again, but also seeing a fall off in activity. For the countries that have opened up, the big fear is there a second wave? Are there outbreaks that we cannot control? But more to the point, is there a virus which comes back in a different form or in a more virulent form in the fall when temperatures get colder again? For the other countries, the countries like India, like the United States that are still battling the virus, the main issue right now is to contain the virus. And unfortunately, the spread has become significant enough that containment is going to be very difficult. This creates an enormous amount of uncertainty because businesses don't know whether there'll be fresh lockdowns and how difficult they will be. Some states in the US are talking about fresh lockdowns. Some states in India are talking about lockdowns and have actually sort of implemented some of those right now. What are the sources of economic uncertainty going forward? I think they are obviously the medical uncertainty. When will a virus vaccine be available? How quickly can it be rolled out? And how widespread will the take-up be? By most counts, we will, if all goes well, have a couple of successful vaccine candidates by the fall. Then rolling it out, vaccinating everybody will take time. So the earliest that we can feel confident going out again across the world is probably by early summer next year. So that's still a long time for businesses to remain closed, especially restaurants, bars, and so on. So it is going to be a long, drawn-out process. And we may have in-between structures, for example, where young go out, but the elderly stay at home. Having a cure would also be fantastic. If we could find one, that would also reduce concerns, allow people to mingle more easily, and of course, a quick and easy test. But right now, the betting is probably a vaccine. Just to throw some cold water on all the optimism, not that we need any, but the earliest vaccines have been produced in the past is 4 years. This is really accelerated production if we can get it out and available by the end of the year and into next year. Second big concern economically is there's been enormous amounts of support, I said, 10, 15, 20% of GDP. That support will have to taper off. You cannot spending, even as the richest country in the world, at that level. So when will that support taper off? How will it taper off? And how will that impair economic activity? That's the second concern. Third concern, which Ms. Bhattacharya alluded to, how will consumer behavior change? Clearly, corporate and consumer behavior will change, and the longer the pandemic is experienced, the more it will change. But in what forms will it change? Will people feel, that now they've experienced of the digital economy, more work will be done at home rather than in the office? What does that say for commercial real estate companies that have an extensive business in offices? Do they have to restructure their offices? Do they have to convert more into home dwellings? I mean, these are the kinds of questions that will arise from changes in behavior. And finally, how will policies change? We already see, of course, enormous spending, but there is also a tendency of countries to look inward and to say this was somebody else's fault. Certainly, as we get closer to the U.S. election, the amount of conflict between the U.S. and China is going to increase, and that impairs global trade, which, as Ms. Bhattacharya pointed out, is going to be extremely important going forward, especially for emerging markets like India, Brazil, Mexico, which are going to be significantly impaired by the virus and need some source of demand to pull them out as they start opening up again. And global trade is going to be an important factor if they can sort of jump onto it, whether it's trade in goods and services or trade in digital services. It's going to be very important, and our countries desperately need an open world. The tendency before the crisis and during the crisis doesn't look good, which is why it's important we should fight for that open world. Now, as we go forward, clearly we're going to see a lot more debt restructuring that will be needed. Ms. Bhattacharya and I spent a long time talking about the bad debt problems of banks, but the bad debt problems of banks then and the bad debt problems that are likely to emerge for banks across the emerging world is going to be an order of, probably not an order of magnitude, but certainly a multiple of what it was in the past. And this implies that we need to spend far more time on creating easy restructuring processes so that the firms that are impaired can get back to work, get back to production. If we don't focus on the problem of repairing the capital structures of these firms, we're going to have much slower growth, much more problems down the line. So this is something that policymakers need to think about quickly. Let me then sort of summarize what do I think are the possible scenarios. The most optimistic one is there is no second wave in the fall. We've contained the virus in a number of countries. In the countries that it is sort of exploding, we find a vaccine eventually which allows us to contain it. Of course, there will be significant damage done in those countries by that time. If the vaccine is is cleared in the fall, rolled out by the end of the first quarter next year, we can get back to near potential by the end of next year in most countries. It'll take a little longer for the emerging markets, which are still battling the virus. That, to my mind, is the optimistic scenario. And if you were more optimistic than that, let's just leave it at I am. That, to my mind, is the most optimistic. There is a pessimistic scenario, of course, which is that the first wave is uncontained. We see an explosion in virus cases, which is hard to, in part because countries are very resistant to lockdowns once again. And there's a second wave which adds on to the first wave in the fall. The vaccine is delayed. The early candidates are found not to be as effective or perhaps somewhat dangerous. And as a result, we continue to have a 95% economy, even in the countries that have contained the virus. And the real sector problems there morph into financial sector problems, and that becomes really problematic for global growth. And of course, when you have slow growth, you have political and social problems also that come at the same time. But that is the dire situation. Most likely we get an outcome somewhere in between. Let me end by talking, about some trends that we might see post-pandemic, and I'll try and link up to some of what Ms. Bhattacharya said. There certainly seems to be greater value to working with minds than hands, especially as we go through the pandemic. In the developed countries, 45 to 50% of the population can work at home. So the country can actually keep working even in the midst of lockdowns. In poor developing countries and emerging markets, the number of people who can work at home is much lower. And as a result, lockdowns have been much more damaging to livelihoods, to economic progress. And many in the lower middle class have slipped back into poverty in these countries. There's a number of years that we've lost in terms of economic progress. So what this means is going forward, there'll be much more of an emphasis on education, and certainly digital technology allows us to do that in a far more effective way than in the past. There is going to be greater automation of work processes. Many companies are figuring out how to do things more efficiently during this crisis, and that will stay on going forward, which also means that we will have to redeploy workers. We will have to figure out how to do that more effectively, and certainly retraining is part of the answer. Corporations are certainly trading off some efficiency in supply chains for greater resilience. They're not necessarily going to go put all their depend on the cheapest producer only. That means some diversification. Doesn't necessarily mean everything will be reshored back to the industrial countries. It does mean a lot more thought given to business continuity. Corporations, households, and governments will have enormous levels of debt going out of this pandemic, and there will be a lot of focus on how to restructure and bring it down over time. Customers are turning to more frugality and savings. That will certainly be a factor. There will be more pressure for universal good healthcare as a result of this crisis. We've seen the consequences of having an inadequate healthcare system, not just in the United States, but also in places like India. There is going to be more of an emphasis on fairness, who receives and who pays. A lot of people looking at the frontline workers in countries, manning the service counters, but who are getting paid much less than the people who are living in comfort at home doing their jobs. And that is going to be a big issue. We're going to pay more attention to tail risks. And that means hopefully more attention to the issue of climate change, a lot more focus on corporate ESG practices as a result. There's going to be much more of a need for capable governments. We've seen what government incompetence can do, and that has been problematic. And there is going to be much more support in public for more capable governments, but also more support for regulation. And lastly, this is a point that Ms. Bhattacharya also made, there is probably going to be more resistance to globalization, probably a bad outcome amongst all these. Let me end with talking a little bit about obvious winners and losers. The obvious winners are the kind of firm that Ms. Bhattacharya leads, e-commerce, technology, also healthcare, including medical technology, a lot more distance medicine being practiced right now, and that will be a feature of medicine going forward. Higher education is going to be more relevant because people will see the value to it. And of course, ed tech is going to be important. Unfortunately, bankruptcy lawyers are also going to be a flourishing industry as we come out of the pandemic. In terms of obvious losers, it's in front of your eyes, travel and leisure. Many of us would be at the same place if we didn't have this pandemic. Aerospace, retail, these are obvious losers in the short term. There are many sectors for which it's hard to tell right now. For example, take automobiles. Car purchases certainly will benefit from people's fear of unhygienic public transport. And you can see in the countries that have opened up, car purchases have come back. But they are going to be hurt by the trend towards frugality and the push towards green consumption. Let me stop there and turn it back to Ron.
Thank you. Anup?
Thank you, Professor Raghuram Rajan, for your valuable insights and holistic perspective for us. I'm Anup Verma from IIT Roorkee, a PanIIT board member, and I invite Prith Banerjee, who's also a PanIIT board member, to introduce Dean of my other alma mater, another great mind from Chicago, Northwestern University's Kellogg School of Management Dean, Professor Deepak Jain. Prith, please.
Yes, thank you, Anup. So it's an absolute pleasure to join this group here today. I have had the pleasure of knowing Deepak in person when I was a professor at Northwestern University. He was my colleague. I used to be in the electrical engineering department. He was a fantastic professor and dean. But over the years, have followed his career through lots of deanships. So as all of you know, Deepak is a consummate business school dean. He's led 4 leading top business schools. Of course, he's most well known for his Kellogg School deanship, but currently he's the European president of the China European International Business School. He was previously the Northwestern University's Kellogg School dean, and during 2001, 2009, it was known as one of the finest graduate schools in the world for 8 years, during which the Kellogg's Business School got the first ranking by Business Week in 2002 and 2004. He also served as Dean of the INSEAD in France, and I had the opportunity to actually interact with him there when I was CTO at Schneider Electric in France. And again, INSEAD is referred as the business school of the world, and he was responsible for all 3 campuses, the campus in Europe, in France, in Asia, in Singapore, and in the Middle East. He's also consulted with many companies such as IBM, AT&T, Nestle, Abbott, Boeing, and American Express. Deepak has received his bachelor's and master's degree from Gauhati University in mathematical statistics, and then another master's and PhD from the University of Texas at Dallas. It is indeed a great honor to present Deepak, to present a brief summary of the economy, and then engage with the speakers and the attendees in a stimulating discussion. Thank you. Welcome, Deepak.
Thank you, Prit. For me, it's a great honor to be together, I would say, on a digital podium with Ms. Arundhati and Dr. Raghu Rajan. And I was asking myself, how did this happen? I'm one of those few people in US who never had the chance to be a part of the IIT circle or even the IIM circle. But today, it's a great day to share the podium with all the distinguished IIT alumni, and particularly Raghu and Ms. Arundhati, whom I got to know very recently on the board of Reliance Industries. Before I make my remark, something came to my mind after listening to both Raghu and Arundhati. This was November 1962. China attacked India. This is month of November. And I remember the teacher came to the class and said, the Chinese army is less than 50 kilometers from the town. The government has asked us to vacate by 6 or 7 p.m. This is about 11 a.m. in the morning. I had just started kindergarten, 1962. I'm born in 1957. And the teacher said they are trying to reach out to our parents to take back home. And we were supposed to leave the town of Tejpur in Assam around 6 p.m. I remember we all ran as refugees in trucks. There was no bridge on Brahmaputra those days. We waited overnight on this side. Next morning, took a ferry. And it took us almost 7 days to reach Rohtak near Delhi, where my grandparents were living. This is November 1962. 55 years later, November 2017, one of those refugees was announced as the President European of one of the best schools in the world called China Europe International Business School. And that refugee had the privilege today to be in front of you. And I attribute this to the power of Indian sanskars and the Indian education system. I never thought that a refugee of 1962 would be asked by the Chinese government and the Ministry of Education, they may not know this, to come and head an institution in China. To me, this is what education is about. And to me, Brand India is the emphasis on education by our parents. That's why when you see all these beautiful minds all over the world today in leading positions, whether in academia, government, or business, this is the blessings of Lord, of Goddess Saraswati and all the hard work of our parents. Before I open the forum with the question and answers, which I think everyone is waiting for, I just thought I will share with you some perspectives on education and global business. I will go over it very quickly and then I will start with the Q&A. Next one. Move on. Yes, go on. The first column. So if you look at the world today, unfortunately in 2012, I went through a very tough time. I was diagnosed with brain tumor with cancer. So when I was recovering, when you recover, I had time to think about, and I thought if you have to think about the world, think big. So I started thinking about how the world has evolved. And if you look up to the 19th century, the business model I would describe is the model of colonialism. We Indians were ruled by the British. Same thing, you can see colonies of France, colonies of Portugal. The players at that time were countries. The metric was power. I remember when I was in kindergarten, the teacher used to say, because at that time we still had teachers from England, that the sun never sets on the British Empire. And the impact was measured by the strength. How many countries you had as your colonies. Then with the adventure of US, next column, I would say that the business model shifted from land acquisition to free market competition. And from colonialism, we went into what I would describe as capitalism. And the players now became corporations because most of the countries got independence. You may have heard of this company, John Deere. I'm a board member. We have celebrated 180 years of John Deere. I was told that the oldest US company happens to be DuPont. And you can see many companies who have a history of 150 to 200 years. And the metric now shifted from power to profits. This is for profit companies. And the impact was measured by success. Success can be your stock price, whatever it is. There were some metrics to determine how successful companies were. Now look today. Next. If I look today, and this is post 2000, my first day as the Dean of the Kellogg School was a remarkable day, September 11th, 2001. I remember welcoming the new class, and about 15 minutes into my presentation, it was a different world. The first plane hit the World Trade Center. Now, I have followed the business schools since then, but today, if you look at the key players, the new modern corporations were started by citizens. You start from Bill Gates, you look at Mark Zuckerberg, you look at all the new companies, whether it is Airbnb or Uber and others. So from countries, we move to corporation to citizens. And there has also been a shift, which I see happening, is the move from metrics to be profits to being a purpose. Ms. Arundhati mentioned about purpose very clearly towards the end of her talk. And I always say that with purpose also comes the impact is on significance. So as the Dean of the Kellogg School, I always said that the purpose of a business school should be, or I used to tell my students, by joining the Kellogg School, you are starting your journey from success to significance. But first be successful before you think of making a difference in the world. because people would only respect you once you have done something like Bill Gates is doing all. He created a very successful platform of Microsoft. So I look at this journey from success to significance, or from profits to purpose, or purpose-driven organizations. Next, and then I will open for question and answer. Now comes how you look at management education. Management education, at least 2 business schools started in 1908, Harvard and the Kellogg School. And up to 60s, the pedagogical tool used to be very much driven by case studies. Then the decision making was driven by judgment and intuition, and the focus used to be on business relevance. Next. But this was the golden period, I would say, of management education, when people like Raghu, myself, we joined business schools coming from analytical disciplines. As was said, I did my degree in statistics and operations research. Raghu comes from economics. We had strong analytical background. The decision making started taking an analytical approach, and the focus happened to be on academic excellence. This was the period when most business schools started hiring people of great background, either from economics, statistics, psychology, anthropology, because we brought a lot of structure to management educations, and the needle shifted in addition to business relevance on academic excellence. If you look at today, next column, a great emphasis has been on experiential global learning. Now that has merit, because we all started doing programs with other countries. But as Mr. Raghu Rajan said, with this COVID, we are also seeing the impact of all this globalization on how businesses are today suffering. So much dependent on China today is creating questions in the minds of the investors. Where do they go next? Decision-making inputs are also driven by ethics, sustainability, and CSR. And the shift is also adding what I describe as social significance. In order to be academic excellence, business relevance, there is a part that what are we doing is good for the society, good for the community, and how we create better citizens who are going to create a world full of peace and prosperity. So the model has changed, and given this framework, I thought I will start with asking Ms. Arundhati. She mentioned in her talk the word called trust. And I have always told my students that competencies can be outsourced, trust cannot. So Ms. Arundhati, how in today's world we can create a culture of professional integrity and trust in this whole digital economy that you are trying to emphasize? To me, at the end, business is about people with the new generation coming to the workforce. How we build this culture of trust and professional integrity?
So, thank you for that question, but it's a very, very tough one, because there's no shortcut into creating trust. It's a matter of creating the right environment so that people are not wrongly incentivized for doing something that breaks the trust. So, we have to ensure that when we are asking people to do something, they very clearly understand that the incentives will not be given for shortcuts, will not be given only for top line and bottom line, but will be given if you have actually kept your customer at the center and ensured that, you have done stuff that is meant to be the best for him. So, it is basically the customer at the center. And in that, I think I'm very serious about it, because I feel that that's something that we cannot overstate. So trust is something that has to be built over a period of time. It can be lost in a trice. You have to really safeguard it. Safeguard it in your processes, safeguard it in your products, safeguard it in the way you train and the way you, guide your employees. But it has to be something on which it is the bedrock on which you build your entire organization. So, again, as I said, no easy ways, no easy answers, but absolutely essential.
And as you said, we need to take a slightly long long-term approach. But long-term can only come if we start it now. And with the younger generation, and I really believe, Mr. Arundhati, that if I look at the generation today, our kids, many of them are driven by a purpose. And if we start building the roots now, I am very optimistic about the future. I just want to tell you personally, and I think that if you start emphasizing, yes, and if you start building it, yes, thank you. Raghu Sahab, everyone is asking this question, and I need your input first before I would also give mine. Is it important to do an MBA in today's world? Is MBA necessary for corporate India? Your views.
I'm not an administrator, but I do depend on having a flow of MBAs so as to get a salary. So just warning to everyone that my answer is obviously biased. But really, I think an MBA is not necessary, but it's a quick way of getting up to speed on some of the tools and techniques in business. Of course, business is not just about tools and techniques. It's about a lot else. It's about things that are harder to learn. Ethics, for example, leadership, empathy. These are all aspects of business management that it's much harder to teach. But certainly on the tools and techniques side, business education can bring you up to speed very quickly. Of course, people go to business school for more than that. They go for the networks that they get. They go, and that's been very helpful. When I was for a brief period in business, it was easy to call people in other firms and say, look, I need this help. And you could call them because you were classmates of theirs in business school. So there are a number of advantages, and you obviously get access to the alumni network, as you know, Deepak, Kellogg's network or Harvard's or Chicago's network, very extensive, and that gives you an in also. But is it absolutely essential? No.
So just there was a person who asked this question, and let me add to what Raghu just mentioned. As a dean of a business school, I get this question very frequently, that what is the importance of MBA? And I tell them to separate management education from the degree MBA. What is important is, what do we teach in management schools is how you put structure on unstructured problems. Or you use the word skills, tools, concepts, and create a structured environment, critical reasoning, structured thinking, and that helps people in order to solve business problems. And those skills, tools are going to be important because businesses are becoming more global, more complex. And that's why my point is, as the dean of business schools in almost every continent you can think, from Asia to Europe to America, my next job would be somewhere in Australia, I think, because that's the only part left for me of the fifth continent. But my point is, for readers or listeners who are interested down the road, getting exposed to some structured thinking and critical reasoning type of an environment is important. But Raghu, what you said is things like professional integrity, business ethics, environmental concerns are also things that we need to emphasize in business schools, the importance of such thing while you make a business decision. So I as a dean, I would say that it is quite, you learn things. It's not necessarily a degree, but the concepts are very important. So my next question is to Ms. Arundhati, and this is a question that many people have asked, and I want to ask you. You have spent more than 40 years in the financial sector. What motivated you to move to the technology sector, and that also now?
Well, I think the time was actually actually something that it's not that I saw the pandemic coming on. So I didn't have any prescience about it. Okay. So the time is just because it happened.
And you
At that
didn't
time.
create it either, right?
Oh,
Yes.
no, that's the last thing. But the fact is that, I had a 1 year hiatus after my chairmanship in SBI. And during that 1 year gardening period, I went around many of these schools and colleges in India and spoke to a lot of youngsters. And many of them used to keep asking me, what will our careers look like? You had a kind of birth to death kind of 40-year career. What will ours look like? And I used to keep telling them that in your time, you will have many careers. You will have to learn, unlearn, and relearn.
Yes.
Okay. And, when this opportunity came up, actually, I already had a nice portfolio, as you know, of directorships and part-time consultancies. When this one came up, I really thought to myself that probably I should walk the talk. Let me see whether I can move from a 210-year-old institution into a 20-year-old institution, from finance into IT, from the Indian public sector into an American multinational, and then see whether I can still make it happen. Because, it's great to be able to give, as they say, gyan. But, when you actually have to take that gyan and walk, walk the talk, so to speak, it's a different challenge altogether. So I decided that it would be something that I would like to try out, and that's why I'm here. And for that matter, Professor, you should have asked me that MBA question, because I'm the only one over here that doesn't have one.
No, but please add to the richness, because I think people in the audience would love to hear that your views.
So, my career is very strange, as you know. I come from a liberal arts background. I majored in English and then joined a bank and worked my way up. And this is a Fortune 500 bank in a 210-year, very conservative establishment, the first woman chair. And then I got out, and now I'm in a young IT company, whereas my earlier organization had an average age of 47. Now I have an average age of 27, okay, amongst my people. So that's the kind of, difference there is. But, you both of you are absolutely right. If you don't have an MBA, you have to do it the hard way. And the hard way can be really hard. It's better to get an MBA and take the shortcut. Much easier.
No, but, shortcuts may also sometimes, in the shortcut, I have seen people, rather than looking at what earning versus learning, rather than focus on learning, people are also thinking of MBA as a forum of learning, of earning. So that may not be a very good one to do.
That's true.
My next one, and this is to, yes.
I have a question from one of the people who is attending.
Yes.
And his question is based on a book that a writer from my neighboring town, Bethesda, Tom Friedman, he wrote the book, World is Flat. As you know, the world is flat. So the question is, to what extent will the world is flat language, to what extent will that language disappear from a lexicon because of COVID-19?
Raghu?
Well, it's obviously a difficult question. The world was never flat. I mean, I think Tom Friedman is very gifted with phrases. So this is one phrase, I think he attributes it to Nandan Nilekani, but really there were always borders, and those borders created frictions. What tech, as well as the reduction in tariffs on trade, did was reduce the size of those borders. Now we're trying to bring them up, but my sense is that this is going to be a tussle for the countries that are trying to erect tariffs, because ultimately they have to compete. And if they are trying to protect themselves from competition, they get outdated. We spent many years in India protected from competition, and we were far behind the rest of the world. and we found that opening up was very damaging to some of the old style industries. So any country that tries to erect barriers and to make it less flat is going to face problems. That said, I think on technology itself, as Ms. Bhattacharya said, there are many opportunities to elevate barriers, including on where data should be, what kind of data can be pushed across, what responsibility you have for stuff that's appearing on your websites. And there's a lot of extraterritoriality that countries are attempting here, which could be problematic. So we can make it much less flat than it is, and the tendency is towards that direction. But I do think that there are forces restraining it from getting too bad, at least as of now.
Thank you, Raghu. And Deepak, because of a time limitation, if you could perhaps ask one more
Yes.
question, and then we can
Exactly.
carry on. Thank you.
I will ask just one question quickly to both of them, just quick. Okay, Raghu, somebody has asked this question: do you think there should be a rule like Dodd-Frank Act in India, as well as to fight any crisis arising out of defaults, perhaps a COVID-19 casualty?
I think we have a lot of rules in India. My temptation would be to say we need to move beyond the rules to the intent of the rules. How do we actually achieve what we're trying to achieve? And we need to do a lot more there. I certainly worry about the NPAs in the system, especially post-COVID, and we need to figure out a way to deal with it. But at this point, I think we have to be pragmatic, we have to be fast, and creating a whole new set of rules is probably not the way we need to go.
Okay, just a quick question for Arun Datti, and then I will be done. And that is, people say that 40% of the IT workforce would need to be reskilled to keep them at pace with the technology developments in the areas of artificial intelligence, machine learning, Internet of Things, data analytics. How can organizations ensure reskilling a business priority, at least in India?
So, I think that 40% number is actually a number that should be higher. Okay.
I see.
So they're not calling it right. Because, today the change in technology is so fast and so enormous that you need to reskill almost regularly. If you look at our company, we come with a new release every 4 months. Okay. So there are 3 releases and we need to get educated in all releases. Okay, as they come in. So, if you are looking at reskilling people, it's a massive effort, but it has to be done. And there, I think, again, Salesforce has done a great job. So they have something called a Trailhead, which is basically a gamified way of learning. And actually speaking, on Trailhead in India, we have 1 million developers, independent developers, the largest number outside of the, and these people have already skilled themselves with nobody on. They've done it just because, it gives enormous opportunity. So I think, in the IT sector, at least, reskilling is the order of the day. It's the way you have to exist. If you don't do it, you will simply become redundant. So to that extent, I think, we don't have a way out from keeping on learning. That's the way we only will survive.
Thank you very much. And really, thanks to Raghu and you both for giving me this opportunity to share this platform. And just before I end my remark, this was 1996. I was at a conference and Professor Raghu Rajan was speaking. And my wife had just come from India and asked me, who is this guy? I say, he's a professor of finance, but I can tell you today, one day he will become the Reserve Bank governor. That was in 1996. And I am not a forecaster, but at least Raghu kept to his promise. And Raghu, thank you. And Ms. Arundhati, thank you for the wonderful opportunity to be with you on this platform. And floor is back to you.
Thank you, Deepak. Just give me a couple more minutes. I want to thank all 3 of you, but just give me a couple of minutes. First of all, I'd like to bring in Viri Bindra. Viri is a IIT Delhi graduate and previous chairman of PanIIT, just to present a small token of appreciation to three of you. Viri?
Yeah, thank you, Ron. Thank you very much. It was indeed an absolute pleasure listening to the panelist. On behalf of PanIIT USA, I'm honored to present this memento as a token of our appreciation to our distinguished speaker, Arun Bhattacharya. So, ma'am, you can see the memento in my hand. Due to the crazy times, I will send you the PDF copy of this memento.
Yeah,
This
that's
is
the
Raghu
best
Rajan.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. My God.
Dr. Rajan's.
Too much
Right.
things.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. Now I'm privileged to present a memento as a token of our appreciation to our another distinguished speaker, Raghuram Rajan. And this is the right one, Raghu.
Thank you. Thank you
Yes.
very much. Appreciate it.
And it makes me feel proud to say that Dr. Rajan is from my alma mater. We are proud of you, Raghu. And finally, I'm delighted to present the final memento as a token of appreciation to our moderator, Dr. Jain, Deepak Jain.
You know, it means a lot to me. I never had the IIT credentials, but today I can say I have an IIT certificate.
So, thank you, Deepak ji. Thank you for your time. I will make sure we email all of you a PDF copy of the memento in the next few days. And well, it was a great pleasure to have all of you here with us today, and hope you will return back sometime in the future. So, Ron, back to you now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Viri. Couple of points here. First, we have 3 events coming up, and this is really a save the date announcement for all of you. On September 10th, we have another virtual conference, somewhat similar. The topic is FinTech. And for that one, we have a brilliant mind from India, Ashish Chauhan, who is the CEO of the Bombay Stock Exchange. So he'll be joining us. Secondly, Mr. Vinay Nair, who is also an IT graduate from IIT Madras, a gold medalist and an entrepreneur and great mind in the FinTech area. So please join us on September 10th. Second one is we have a large summit coming up on December 4th. It'll be an all-day event. Please go ahead and register now. And third one, our partners, Wheels Group, has an event coming up on July 25th, where they will interview His Highness Maharaja of Mysore. And they will be talking about the rural upliftment. That's one of the areas that interests His Highness. Next, I'd like to thank briefly the sponsors, Riversand, Z-Cubes, GoProcure, and Times Images. We encourage you and your companies to sponsor our events, and please contact any one of the 2 people listed or go to our website and please do sponsor. Thank you. Next thing is I would greatly like to thank you, the 3 speakers that we had today. They're absolutely the best minds in economy. Arundhati, thank you. Raghuram, thank you. And Deepak ji, thank you, and thanks for the Rohtak connection.
Thank you.
Now, I would also like to thank our volunteers, particularly the ones you've not seen on the screen today. And those are Arun Jain, Ronak Mehta, Animesh Pathak, Sanjeev Goyal, Swati Deshpande, and from Wheels, Suresh Shenoy. And finally, to all the participants, we had close to 1,000 people, actually counting Facebook, exceeding 1,000 or 2,000 that registered, that were actually live with us today. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you all the participants, and hope to see you in our next event. Thank you and bye.
Thank you.